On this episode of the Sacred Playgrounds podcast, we're talking about pre-camp prep for our camper families. We are going to talk about 10 things. It's a top 10 list that we can do pre-camp that will affect our experience during camp and affect our outcomes after camp. Welcome to the Sacred Playgrounds podcast, where we turn numbers into stories and data into insights. We dive deep into theology and research, paired with practical wisdom and action steps to help camping ministries thrive. I'm your host and producer, Jared Rendell, a camp enthusiast and part of the Sacred Playgrounds team. This podcast features Dr. Jake Sorensen, a scholar, author, practitioner, and the founder of Sacred Playgrounds. Be sure to subscribe, submit a question to us to be featured on the podcast, and click that support button to help make these episodes happen. Find us on Facebook and Instagram at Sacred Playgrounds or at sacredplaygrounds.com. Wonder with us what God might have in store at your sacred playground. Hey, welcome to the playground, everyone. Here we are, Jake. The sun is out.
The sun is out.
We told people we would update them, and we haven't lately. How's your birdwatch count? It's going to start getting spring. Birds coming. Do you know your birdwatch app count?
They're starting to migrate. Absolutely. I was just checking this morning. Oh, my watch number so far for the year is 46 species. That's pretty good, right?
We have not updated them enough because it was only you had just started. It was like 10 or something before.
But that was like the first week or two of the year. Like I've done some traveling. Like I was just in New York State at Stony Point out there with some good friends. Saw some birds up there, and I've been to Texas twice. Haven't been able to take enough walks outside, but whenever I do, I find some new species. So, and now the migration is starting, so we're really hopefully the number's gonna explode here in the next couple of weeks.
I mean, all we get is messages from listeners wondering about your birdwatch count.
It was actually funny
of all their seats.
When I was at Stony Point, there was one of our podcast listeners said, "How's the bird count going?"
Did they really?
Yes.
See? Oh, I love it. So one of the things that we love coming to conferences and things like that with you guys. This year is the Great Gathering, as we've mentioned a couple times. And if you get emails, so we're helping actually do a little bit of the planning and things like that for the Great Gathering, the Outdoor Ministry Connection Great Gathering. So that's happening in November. We just submitted some workshop proposals there because those were due last week. And I didn't even tell you that I updated your bio to include that you like bird watching and that there's an app for it. It's in there. Sorry, heads up. It's already submitted. There's nothing we can do.
It's now in the official biography. I feel great about that. So
yeah. Well, I was noticing your last bio, I included that you like hauling your kids around, which you still do, except, they drive themselves for the most part to a lot of those things now because
life transitions, man. Life transitions. Different seasons, right? And we're in that period right now where the seasons are changing, and the springtime is here. Here in the upper Midwest, we go between warm days and then it snows, and then warm days and it snows. We're kind of in that season, but we're changing seasons at camp too, and that gets exciting. That gets us excited about summer prep.
We do, right? And so that's what we're talking about in this season. I feel like directors, site directors, program directors have to do a mode switch. I was thinking about that today. They have to do a mode switch so often right now because we talked about, if you didn't listen to the last episode, go listen to that when we talked about staffing and this whole kind of staffing cycle. And we're in the midst of multiple overlapping stages of that cycle because there's still some recruiting happening, but there's also, we got prep to do, and we're preparing to train as well. And so we're planning, so we're recruiting, preparing, and planning all at the same time. And the reality is that's the case for our campers and our parents too. And so they are, at somewhere along their journey, as part of what was striking about this is we know, and we need to think about it like this, to be just frank, is we need to remember that everybody's on a journey. It is not just this transaction of register, come to camp, done with camp, goodbye. There is a journey. It's experiential and relational. So all these keys that we talk about with camp remind us that this is a cycle. This is a journey. And when we remember that, we think about it like that. More cycle, less transaction. It's really helpful. And that means that there is a season right now where you still got some people signing up, hopefully, of course. And then there's this time in there where camp's not here yet. The physical get there camp isn't here yet. And this prep time is actually an incredibly valuable time for, of course, our staff, like we talked about, but campers and parents as well. And that's
So
why we're talking
important.
about that today.
So important. We sometimes think of camp as having a beginning and an end, like at the beginning of the session, end of the session. That's not how the experience works. The experience is much longer than that. And we want to be part of this journey with them and walk with them in the preparation for camp, during camp, and then after camp. And so to think about it a little more holistically is what we're encouraging you all to do.
Yeah, that's the idea. As usual, we have learned some things about the perspective, the thoughts, the ideas of our parents and campers on the way in, and we've got some data about that kind of helps set our table. So we're going to do that for our stat of the week.
Stat of the week. Stat of the week. Stat of the week.
All right, friends, our stat of the week is 93%. 93% of parents last summer in 2024 said they were at least satisfied with the communication and preparation they got prior to the camp session. And so this is a really important one. So we've talked about communication during camp. That's oftentimes one of those where we get the higher levels of dissatisfaction, 15,
Right.
20% dissatisfied or less than satisfied. This one is nice and high, 93%. Obviously, there's still room for improvement there. We'd love that to be 97% or higher in terms of satisfaction with the pre-camp communication. But in general, this isn't one of those things that's on fire, right? It's not something that we say, oh my gosh, we got to do something about this right now. This is a value added thing that we're talking about for a lot of our camper families. And one of the key things here is we don't just ask satisfaction. We said, are you satisfied or does it exceed your expectations? And so some of these things that we really excel at, we'll get 50, 60, 70% of parents say that exceeded my expectations. With this one, it's 45% exceeds expectations, and another, that say I'm just satisfied, and then some that say less than satisfied. So there is room for growth here, and that's what we want to help you with as you prep your families for camp.
Thanks, Jake. That helps set the table. Like we said, that helps us know that obviously this is important. And there's been some growth and some progress in making sure that parents are getting the information they need. And it feels like their base expectation, and this isn't just parents, right? This is parents and campers, and there are some other audiences. We're going to get there, but it feels like their base expectation is they have the information that they need.
Right.
When dissatisfaction comes up, it's when there was no email. They didn't get any emails. We're going to assume, for the most part, everybody, that that you're doing some of this. You're making sure that they're getting, the baseline of information on, hey, when does camp start? When does check-in start? Here's a link to directions, some of those things. Yes, of course. So don't skimp on the information in some of these ideas. Yes, share that important information they need and organize that information well. We'll get to a little bit of that in just a second. So we've packaged this into 10 things. These are 10, and we're going to be quick with them. These are 10 things that we can do right now in this season of preparation, in this time from, hey, they hit go, they're registered, they're coming to camp, to when camp starts. 10 things that we can do in this prep phase that can make a big difference for their satisfaction on the way in and their expectations on the way in, their experience during the week, and their outcomes after camp. So we're going to run through them. Jake and I are going to kind of tag team and run through these ideas. And we'll see where we go. Sound like a plan?
Sounds like a plan. Jared said we're going to be quick. That's famous last words with us. But
hold us
to
it.
Hold us to it, right? What are they going to do? Interrupt us?
No, we got people pausing the podcast like crazy now.
Skip ahead.
Fast forward 15-second button. Just get to the next one.
Here we go. I'm ready.
All right, so we're gonna dive in. All right, like I said, Jake and I are gonna go back and forth. Jake's got our first one. Jake, tip number one.
Tip number one: be a resource hub. Don't just think of yourself as a place where people come to do camp. This is something that we've really honed in on in the Rhythms of Faith project, and it's so important. We have this opportunity to be a resource hub for these camper families. They're looking to us as experts in the field. They want some information, some training. How can I help my kid so that when they come home from camp and they're excited, that I can continue that I can help equip them for their faith journey after camp, all these things. You have the opportunity to be a resource hub, and it starts now. And so when we think about this communication, and this is Jared's terminology, so I'm going to put that out there, but he said, don't just be informational. be missional and faith formational. And this is really, really important. You want to make sure that they have the packing list, right? If they can't find the packing list, then your communication is on fire. But you want to go beyond the packing list. You want to say, how can we be intentional about communicating our mission and our vision and our strategy to our camper parents? Here's what to expect from the experience, not just in terms of what the kids are going to do. They're going to, ride horses and go swimming. But here's what we're trying to do. Here's how we're aiming at building character. Here's how we're going to make sure that they feel comfortable and safe at camp. Make sure that the parents know these things. Sometimes in the parents survey, they'll say things like, I'm not sure about that. I didn't know what the policy was about handling conflict resolution or bullying and things like that. You can let them know all those things up front. What's your cell phone policy? Make sure they know that up front. Not just the policy, but the why behind that policy. We don't allow cell phones at camp, and here's why. And here's how we're going to communicate with you. Here's the expectations. And so all of this should really be put together with your philosophy in like a parent handbook. That's what I would suggest. Have that posted on your website so that parents can access that information and that you can access that information so that you are able to follow up and you have a coherent strategy for how you're going to be communicating with camper families, not just during the camp experience or not just the packing list, but how are you helping be a resource hub for them?
Thanks, Jake. Yeah, that's number one. And it leans into number two. And here's number two is break your messaging, your content, these things you're sharing into clear, small, bite-sized segments. Right? And this comes out in a couple ways, but that's the overall idea is we need to break these things down into clear, small segments that parents can opt into reading, finding, searching when they're able to and when they're looking for a certain thing. If you do a parent handbook, you should do a parent handbook, like we said, that we want to design the content of that parent handbook with clear headlines. And this is actually a lot of our content, email especially. It's in 3 parts. And I think we've shared this before. Super clear headline or question, like maybe it's an FAQ section. Those are great. Clear headline or question. The content that's important, very little fluff in that content, right? The clear, the point, make that point, share the information and the missional piece that they need. Say what you're saying in a clear, small way and give them a call to action whenever possible, right? Or an expectation or something nice and clear. So we want to break our content into small, clear sections. Don't feel like if you sent an email with your parent handbook sometime in the weeks before camp, you're done.
Yep.
That's really the main point, because a lot of us are still doing that. Is the reality is we're taking that parent handbook and we send it out and we say, there, we gave them all the information, and then a parent comes and they say, I didn't know that, and you say it's in the handbook, right?
Yeah.
It's our equivalent of it was in the bulletin.
Yep. We did our due diligence. We already sent it to you.
Right. All of that.
And that's like basically saying it's your fault for not reading it.
Right.
And
right.
And what I hear you saying is, no, it's our fault for not communicating it clearly.
Yeah, I think that's true. And so one, that means like design, especially if it's a lot of content, your web page is your parent handbook, design that content with clear sections where they can go to what they need to go. They can, click what they need to click. And two, though, then is this, and this is where it gets more actionable. Take that content, take all of that stuff to share and break that down into smaller bites and send it out in smaller bites, right? That's probably going to look like email and maybe social content. And a lot of it you can kind of reuse and repurpose and reword and attach to a clear call to action and send that as an email, 1 to 2 of them, maybe a week for those parents that are coming, because they already opted in. They're okay getting messages from you when they're really valuable. And so when we can break that stuff down and send it in clear segments, hey, here are 3 tips to get your kid ready to stay overnight in a cabin if they're nervous.
Yeah.
Right. Or whatever it might be. So we want to break that stuff down into content that they can chew on and use and apply.
That's great. They're not just sending their kid to camp. They're subscribing to our philosophy, and we're giving them that content as we go. I love it. I love it. I love
Yep.
it. I love it.
So that's
Good
2.
stuff.
Break your content into smaller bits that they can digest.
Number 3, as we talk about content, it's not just about communicating with the families and the parents, because we have partners in this. And this is something that we've really been leaning into with Rhythms of Faith, is that we have these natural partners with these churches, these houses of worship that want these young people to have a positive experience. They want them to come back excited about their faith and attending church more frequently. And we want that too. We want to do that handoff. And so communicate with your churches. That's number 3. Help them help you prep the parents and the families. And so what does this look like? Do they have your content? Do your church partners know what your plans are for this summer in terms of faith formation materials, Bible study, or Christian ed theme that you've got going on? Are there prep things that they can do with their Christian education program to help prep the kids for camp? That's 1. 2, is there a commissioning service? If they want to do a commissioning service, don't make them make it up themselves. Provide them a resource and say, hey, here's a short commissioning for all the campers that are coming to our camp this summer. And by the way, here's the list of those campers who are signed up for camp this summer. And here's a commissioning service that you can do as part of your regular worship service. You can invite them to church and say, we're going to commission you for your summer at camp. That's a really powerful thing. And it can remind them that the church community is behind them and is praying for them, and really help that connection and that partnership. So communicate with your churches. If you invite pastors to your camp during the summer, so like when their kids are there, let them know that and make sure they know that they're invited. You want them to know that they're partners. And how easy is it for you to say, these are the people from your church that are coming to camp and that are registered for camp? If you've got that in your registration form, then you can let them know this is how many are coming from your church. And that's a great way to connect with your churches and make sure you're being a good partner in faith formation with them.
Yeah, that's an important audience, right? And I mean, the truth is, and we've mentioned some of these before, but the truth is we have a lot of audiences at camp. We have a number of audiences at camp. And really what we're calling out is there's a prep phase here for them and leading up to a summer. More of these audiences. And a lot of this comes from high level marketing and communications strategies, right? Travis, remember when we were on with Travis Allison, he talked about this as a big part of his camper recruitment and retention playbook. We need to remember that we have audiences and different audiences. So this is our next one. This is segmenting your audiences intentionally and communicating with them intentionally. And so we have these different audiences and we want to speak to them intentionally. And some of this gets really tangible with your actual list, right? So your actual list of campers, different age groups, for example, might need some different communication. Some of the big ones that we don't always think about with our parents might be that parents at different levels of experience with camp might need different communication.
Oh, absolutely.
And almost all of our systems can drill down on these things. We can segment these things. A lot of the camp management systems and the databases are able to do this. And it doesn't mean start from scratch each time. No, I get that we don't have the capacity to do that. An additional paragraph specific to that audience at the front of an email where you're sharing the parent handbook, for example, or even parts of a parent handbook that have an add-on for first-time parents, for example, that says, if you're a first-time parent, make sure you read this one as well. And we can send that to them specifically because we can usually tell when those are happening. And so knowing your audiences, breaking those down and communicating with them specifically.
So
the
important.
Other place the audience, yeah, it really is. The other place the audience thing comes in is remembering that they engage in different spaces potentially, right? And so you still have some audiences that are, they're going to need part of that in physical paper. They are really active in a social space. They open every email. So remembering some of those different spaces, you're either duplicating or being specific. Hey, I got to focus this communication on this space because I know this group of people engages there.
This is so practical when I think about, like, if I'm a first-time parent, then I don't need to know from your email what's new at camp because everything's new to me, right? And if I'm a returning parent,
there's a great example.
I probably don't need the virtual tour sent to me, but if I'm a first-time parent, I want that virtual tour. I want to see what your camp looks like. And if I'm a returning parent, I want to know that you redid something in the dining hall or did something cool with the cabins or something like that. What's updated, what's new. So that's some really practical communications pieces for your audiences. This is good stuff.
Yeah. So that was 4, segment your audiences, communicate with them intentionally.
Number 5, introduce them to your summer staff. And this is so important, and a lot of you do this. It's so simple with social media and with websites now. As you're hiring your summer staff, this is exciting for you. Who's coming back? Let them know. and then introduce them. A brief bio, sometimes a video message is really, really important. That the parents and the campers can start to meet and get to know who's going to be at camp this summer. It's a simple thing to do. It helps you engage your summer staff, and so that they get more excited, gives them something to do and engage. It gets them to meet one another, but it also is really helpful for the parents and for the campers as they get to know your summer staff. So introduce them to your summer staff is number 5.
Number 6, and Jake mentioned this as one of the possibilities, is in lots of our spaces and in what we're conditioned to, video content is really, really valuable right now. And that has to do in part with things like social media algorithms that favor video content. And more importantly, why this actually matters is it will make a big difference if they see your face and they see your space. If you need a little mantra for it, they need to see your face and they need to see your space. So introducing your summer staff by way of asking them to film a quick selfie style video that says the same thing that I've seen a lot of these, here's our social media template and our post and, so and so, and that's totally valuable. You want to take that to the next level? Have them introduce themselves in a simple selfie style video that you post in your stories. You turn one or more of them into a Facebook reel. You post some links to that in your email. Video content does really well, and it's really engaging because, again, they need to see your face and they need to see your space. It connects you with them at a different level of depth than any kind of written or even visual content can do by itself. So real-time, short, high-impact video content. These aren't 8-minute videos. These are short videos. Most of them are less than 2 minutes. Some ideas, and Jake mentioned one. Virtual tours is a great one. Hey, new families, we wanted to give you a chance to walk around, or maybe you've got something new, a new thing, a new experience, a new building. Also great video content. They haven't seen this. Let's give you a sneak peek of this, and then when you come, now you get to experience it in person. So virtual tours are a really great way, especially for new folks. Jake already mentioned that. These pre-camp prep ideas, right? Sharing one of those, a clear sentence or headline, a little bit of content around it and what they can do about it in a short video can be an incredibly valuable way to communicate to them. So they need to see your face. They need to see your space. You can lean into short, high impact. Doesn't have to be incredibly produced. There's a place for that stuff. Here's our whole summer video. Absolutely. Share that. But they are used to, and they are taking in a lot of short, high impact video content. Be in those streams, be part of that.
Well, and part of this is like you're sharing the excitement with them. You can take them on a journey with you as you're prepping for the summer.
Emotion.
I mean, you remember, when I was working at camp, like every little milestone got you more excited. Like we're planting the new flowers. The tulips are up. I worked at a camp where we had horses, and they would be farmed out to different places, and they would start coming back in the spring. And that was so exciting. And it's like summer is coming. The horses are coming back. Like share that with your campers. We're filling the pool. Look at this. All those milestones as you prep for the summer are things that you can share in simple videos, and it helps get families excited, campers excited about the summer to come. So I love that one.
Yep. What's next?
Number 7, share your songs. And this is a really interesting one that I think we sometimes neglect. But I worked at a church for a number of years, and we had VBS every year. We used group publishing. They have a highly produced VBS curriculum, and they always did new songs, and they would send out a CD. And those kids loved listening to the songs and learning the lyrics before they arrived for VBS. And so this is something simple that you can do. You've got those favorite camp songs. What's going to be your theme song this summer? What's going to be the song or 2 songs or 3 songs, whatever it is that you're going to sing every single week this summer? Teach those to the campers before camp. Have your staff be singing them. Most of these we can share, right? There's ways that we can share them, whether that be an original recording that you can share online, or if you don't have licensing to do that, share a recording of whatever a popular musician or worship band that recorded it and say, this is the song that we're going to sing. Share that with your campers, with your parents, and with your churches, because your church partners might include that then in a worship service prior to camp, and the campers can learn it there and then come to camp and sing it every week at camp. So especially those songs that are going to be kind of your theme songs for the summer. share those. It's a really tangible way to get people excited about camp and get them singing those songs right away.
We did this a couple weeks ago at my church, Jake. I do just a quick bit of, kind of on Wednesday nights. There's this crossover of kind of like the Bible school kids and the confirmation kids for just a few minutes. And we decided to fill that with music. And at the end of it, I had them all come up, and we sat right at the beginning of the I'm in front of the altar, and we had a mini campfire. And right, how many camps sing Sanctuary? And we had a mini campfire, and a bunch of those kids had done it, and a bunch of those kids were going to camp for the first time. And so they heard us have a little mini campfire and sang Sanctuary together.
Never underestimate the power of music.
Yeah, that's true.
Even if you're not a music person, never underestimate the power of it for memory, for retention, for joy, for all of these wonderful benefits.
Yeah. So here's the next one. Camp is so relational. It's one of these, it's one of these 5 fundamentals. And again, part of the theme of this whole thing is to not just be informational, but be, again, missional and faith formational with this whole thing. And so we've got an opportunity, number 8, to create space to connect prior to camp. Create space to connect prior to camp. Okay. This could come in a handful of ways. One, there's some digital space things that can happen here. If you don't already have an ongoing, most likely Facebook still from a social standpoint, most likely Facebook group, but also potentially like things like GroupMe and these other things that some are using, these spaces that are meant to connect digitally. Add those folks to that. Invite them, make sure they have the link to that group. Because if we can create some space, let's take that digital one, for example, where a parent who's been there for 5 years and they know how this works can connect and say, oh yeah, hey, I can tell you what check-in looks like. And your staff can even enter that space. But if you can start enabling storytelling and things like that, where your participants are the ones telling those stories, that's amazing. Versus you just sharing information. Of course, do that. But if you can create space for them to connect. So digital spaces is one of those possibilities. And physical space is potentially another one, right? So some people do, pre-camp, days where you can come to, like, it's a day camp or sometimes even a quick night. Those things can be really interesting. Hey, you're coming to camp later, come get a taste of it here for a chunk of time, and we're gonna preview and share some of what the experience is going to be like. There's also potentially a way to leverage those church relationships as well for something like that. Hey, can you host a conversation for those that are already signed up? We'll come join you if we can. They do that in like the Camp Sunday, but that's almost always in try to get more people to come to camp mode. There could be some big time value in remembering, again, this is a relational cycle, and entering physical space with them and part of that in this pre-camp prep mode. So use churches, use camp, work days, extra days, preview days, things like that can be really valuable. Creating space to connect prior to camp can make a big difference in, again, their experience during, because they know what things are going to be like and their outcomes.
Love it. Number 9, set the table for post-camp now. So we've got, we always think about like follow-up is the next thing, right? So we're focused so much on the on-camp experience that we need to be, but we need to think about this holistically. We are part of their journey, and we want to equip them at camp, and we want to send them home with resources after camp and have them continue some of these things that they learned at camp, things like devotionals in the evening with their family that they did at camp. We want them to do that after camp as well. We want them to pray at the dinner table, all these different things. Why not start now? Set the table for those things now. So what are the things that you're really trying to influence post camp, especially with these faith formation practices? Set the table for those things now. Give them the resources for those things now. So this includes things like music, right? But it also includes things like table prayers. Hey, are you praying with your campers in the evening? When they come to camp, we're going to be doing this devotional practice at camp. Or here's some scripture passages that we're going to be doing. Here's some materials for you as a parent to participate in with your child in preparation for the camp experience. Right? So you're setting the table now for the camp experience and then for the post-camp experience as well. Keep in mind this entire experience. It's not just at camp. It's at camp and away from camp, but that includes pre-camp, during camp, and post-camp. The entire experience. So set the table now for those post-camp impacts that you want to have.
Yeah, that's really helpful, because to be able to see when they see that end of camp or post-camp resource, email, handout, whatever it is, if they've You've already given them a clue about what that's going to look like and be like. The adoption of that is so much more likely.
That's exactly right.
It's so much more likely for them to go, oh yeah, we actually were already doing that before, and now they're excited about it because they just left camp and they were having that experience, and they went, oh yeah, the familiarity of that, right? There's a reason why that word, the familiarity, is rooted in that word family. And yeah,
this is the thing, guys. Parents get dissatisfied when they're surprised by something. You don't want them to be surprised by anything. You want to let them know exactly what's going to happen at camp, exactly what they should expect, exactly what your agenda is. You have an agenda for their children. Let them know what that is. We're going to help them grow in character. We're going to help them meet new people, try new things, grow in their faith, get more excited about experiencing God in the world, and more wonder about nature and the outdoors and the night sky. All these things that you're going to do, let them know what your mission and agenda is and invite them into this. Say, we're a partner with you in forming your child, and here's what we're going to ask of you. Can you do this with your child? And we're going to equip you. We're coming alongside you in this thing. So be upfront. You're not trying to hide anything from them. You don't need to pretend that the experience is all just going to be water sports, and then suddenly there's a Bible study that they didn't expect. No. Prep them. Right. Say, this is what we're going to do, and Bible study is going to be part of it, and here's how it's going to be incorporated, and we're going to have a good time doing that, and here's what we're trying to do at camp.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good theme in a lot of this stuff, right? This is share mission, share philosophy, across all of these things. Here's the other thing to add to those missions, and this is our 10th, to those missional words, those faith formational words, all of those things, is use the data. Use the data. Use what you know. Please, we're gathering it for a reason, but it's not just us. You have it too. Yes, share those missional words. Share those stories. Give it a foundation of data. Give it a foundation of what you know, and some of that you can gather from places that you already have. We've talked about gathering those insights from your own internal sources. And you've got a lot of stuff now externally that you can use. And so whether you're going to go to sacredplaygrounds.com/research and look at the research hub and grab a bunch of the quick, info pieces, the graphics that are already made that we share in our stat of the week and things like that here, or maybe you're going to look through some of the projects more to pull something. Maybe you've got some info that you did some analysis from your surveys last summer that you did at the end of camp, or whatever it might be. Use the data that you have. You are in a world where they're hearing that, all this input, all these influences, and the fact that you offer some proof to the things that you're saying makes a big, big difference in your audiences, in a lot of your audiences. When you can lay foundation with numbers that fit like a puzzle piece into those stories, right, and fit like a puzzle piece into your camp philosophy, then you will have this impactful narrative that really prepares them well and increases impact during, increases impact after camp when you use that data. So use it, gather it, use it. One of the ones, if you want, check out the Y Camp resource that we just put out a little bit ago. That is exactly what it is. It's a handful of these statistics, these data points, and the action steps and the perspectives that connect with them. So if that's one that's helpful, go take a look at that. I just got a message the other day from a camp that's using that. And it was the one my kids are going to. And I saw this graphic in this email and I went, yes, exactly. Right. As a parent, that makes a difference for me. Right. Yep. And as a camp connected person, that makes a difference for me. So use the data. You've got access to a lot of it. And there's ways to gather more.
Awesome.
10, Jake.
Top 10. Yeah.
10.
This was like a David Letterman show. That felt
Letterman.
Like a flashback there. That's good stuff.
Here we go. You ready? We're going to run you through. If you're making a checklist, I'm going to give it to you. Take a breath, grab your pen. I'm going to give you the headline for each one. Okay. Number 1, be a parent resource hub. Number 2, break your messaging into smaller bite-sized bits. 3, communicate and prepare your churches and help them help you prepare. 4, segment your audiences and communicate with them intentionally. 5, introduce them to your summer staff. 6, use real-time, short, high-impact video content in this camp prep phase. Teach them your songs. Create space to connect prior to camp. Set the table for post-camp now. And use the data. There's 10.
Well done.
Jake, I actually kind of like how that wasn't actually that hard to come up with, right? Jake and I, we put a lot of energy into prep and thinking through these things, of course. And it's like, gosh, there's some good stuff that you can do It makes a big difference on the way in.
And some of it's so simple. It's just about being intentional, right? It's just about being intentional. Yeah. And what I'd love to see is, what are you doing? What's number 11, 12, 13? What are the next 10
Love that.
you guys are all doing? Share them with each other, share them with us. Let us know how you are prepping your families for the summer.
Yeah. All right. So that would be helpful. We are almost done. We're going to take a second and do our quick camp question.
Quick camp question.
Jake, I love when our quick camp questions are highly relevant, and this feels highly relevant. Real time, happening right now, and it's kind of a heavy one, actually. So we got this question from our friend Amber Naylor. We actually had answered one of her questions last season, and she sent another one. So we're going to talk about this for a second. Here's a question: immigration enforcement activity is escalating nationwide right now in the U.S., and we know this has impact beyond. We have camps that are listening outside the U.S., but the impact is broader. Immigration enforcement activity is escalating nationwide. How are camps responding? What policies are in place or are being added to protect campers and staff? Are there any camp-specific trainings? What messages is going out? What messages are going out to families? That's what Amber's asking.
Amber, thanks for this question. This has been a topic at some conferences recently, and it is such an important one to focus on. And so I want to start by saying this isn't, our top area of expertise, and you have resources available for you. So the American Camp Association has a forum. This has been a topic on that forum recently.
That's a
Camp
good spot.
Connections Facebook page. This has been a topic on that Facebook page recently. And so I'd encourage you to look at what other camp directors are doing. So the key thing is, this is an important issue now, and it's an important issue to get in front of. So when we have these new things that come up, it's not really new, but it's new in the sense of the fear. There's a heightened fear, especially for all of our immigrant families who are sending young people to camp. And some people are dismiss it as irrational. That's not something that we can do. We don't dismiss these things as irrational. We say, this is how we're responding. And we respond with compassion. And so make sure that you have a policy. Don't just push this off and say, we'll see what happens. We'll see. It'll probably won't happen. Because you're right, it probably won't happen. But what if it does? What if immigration and customs enforcement comes to your camp? What is the response? That is something that is really important for you and your board of directors to have a very frank conversation about, and to get a policy in place so that you know exactly how you're going to respond. This happens periodically throughout camping history, right? We get these new challenges or threats, and we say, oh, this is something I hadn't thought of. So something like, you probably have a policy for what happens if there's an active shooter at your camp. If you don't, you better get a policy for that. So this is something that you're probably never going to have to use, but you better be ready for it.
Yeah.
And this is a current fear for a lot of our camper families, a lot of them, especially our immigrant families. And so having a clear policy and being able to respond to them with compassion, and not just say, oh, we don't really think it's going to be a problem, or we're just going to comply with whatever we're told to do. That's not a policy. Lay it out and say, this is how we're going to communicate with parents. This is how we're going to respond if this does happen. Here's how we know our rights in our state, and things like that. So I think you're absolutely right to address this and to bring it up. And I encourage every single one of you listening to, if you haven't already, to make sure that you have a written policy, and that your summer staff are aware of what that policy is.
Yeah, your people in your spaces are often, in a lot of these policies, it's getting clarity on people in spaces, right? That staff need to be informed, and what are the different spaces at your camp? There's a lot in most states about public and private spaces and the difference that makes with whatever it is. But yeah, that's the big point is I have a written policy. So thanks, Jake. This camp prep time is important, right? I mean, if there's a big headline overall, is that this camp prep time is important. It was helpful for, Travis had brought again some of this up in that recruitment retention playbook. This makes a difference for recruitment, future recruitment, makes a difference for camper retention for sure. The numbers are clear on that, the bigger ones. And so, so these things make a big difference. This is often a phase that doesn't get a lot of attention. So grateful for it. If I'm in a camp director chair, this is some stuff that I would be going, I gotta make some adjustments, make some tweaks, add a thing, apply something differently, empower some staff, things like that. So helpful to run through these things, Jake.
Thanks for what you're doing, everybody. You're doing amazing work. Remember that you're a partner. You're walking alongside these parents and these families and these churches in what you're doing. The camp experience is only a small part of this amazing journey that they're on. And so be a good partner and consider this a time of preparation as part of the camp experience. Blessings in your ministry as you prepare for this summer.
Amen. Thanks, everybody, for listening to the Sacred Playgrounds podcast.
Hey there, camp supporters. A common question that team members at Sacred Playgrounds get is, how can we support your work? Here's 5 ways you can support Sacred Playgrounds. First, pray for us and for our clients. Second, share the email content, the social posts, and podcasts that you find helpful. Third, you could hire us or buy our products by heading to our website and checking out the camp store. Fourth, buy us a cup of coffee. Whole team loves a good cup of caribou coffee. Or fifth, buy us a virtual cup of coffee at coffee.com, ko-fi.com/Sacred Playgrounds. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to the Sacred Playgrounds podcast. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Sacred Playgrounds or at Sacred Playgrounds on Instagram. Be sure to hit the follow or subscribe button wherever you're getting this podcast. And if you like this content and it's helpful, you can support the podcast by clicking that support button. Our theme music was written and performed by Taylor Wilson. You can find all his original songs wherever you get your music. Learn more about what we're up to and connect with the team at sacredplaygrounds.com.